What's up, guys? Welcome back to another video. I'm back here with Kathe Kline. We are on our third episode, our third video on this series of the steps of becoming really an abundantly successful Medicare agent and building a very successful Medicare agency. The first two videos, we got through the first three steps. Kathe is, for any of you that aren't familiar, Kathe is the founder of CertifiedMedicareAgents.com, which is a fantastic website. We'll be linking it down in the description if anybody wants to learn more about it. And she came up with this incredible step-by-step progression of what it takes to move from one stage to the next of growing as a Medicare organization, a Medicare practice. So I'm excited to get back into it and jump back in. If you missed the first two episodes, we're actually going to be linking them in the description of this video. So make sure that you go and watch those first if you haven't watched those yet. Without further ado, I'm excited. So Kathe, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for bringing me on again, Christian. This has been such fun talking with you and just the back and forth, the learning from you as well. So I just love it. And I'm looking forward to seeing what your viewers have to say about some of these steps that we're talking about. So last time we have already talked about stage one, which is pre-licensing, stage two, which is contracting and AHIP, and stage three, which is, in my opinion, the hardest stage, and that is getting started, and that's your first 10. So what we're going to do is work on the next stages, and I call stage four the getting going stage, and that is your first 100 clients. And I know plenty of agents, they stop at that stage, and if that's your goal to get 90 clients or 100 clients and you stop, that's fine, you do you. But we're going to talk about the different stages where you're at so that you can know where you're at in your Medicare life cycle. So that getting going stage, that getting your first 100, that's where the snowball kind of starts building its little kernel, and it starts to roll and it starts to get bigger. And in that stage, you're really trying to build your business so that the business starts building itself. But in that first 100, it's you, and maybe your upline is helping a little bit. My upline never, gave me leads and let's talk about the difference, Kristen, between a lead and a name. So my first upline did give me names of people who were turning 65. Personally, I don't consider that to be a lead because you know nothing about the name. You don't know if they're working and they don't need Medicare. You don't know anything about them. And so I loved getting the names. But personally, I didn't consider that a lead. Now, I'm not an upline. You are, Kristen. So do you consider a turning 65 name a lead, or how do you classify that in your organization?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, the way that I actually would look at that would be I'd consider that data. So I think if you have let's say a list of people that are turning 65, to me, that's not a lead, that's data. And I see people all the time kind of, and usually it's coming from headhunters and recruiters and things like that. They're like, we have leads. We'll give you 1,000 leads. It's like, no, I don't consider that a lead whatsoever. I consider it a name on a piece of paper. Now, in some perspective, probably a majority of leads are a name on a piece of paper, but the difference to me between data and a lead is data somebody that never asked to speak to you. You just happen to know some things about them. A lead is something where you have similar information, maybe a little bit more information about them, but they actually have showed intent of wanting to have a conversation with you. That's the
Right.
differentiation point in my mind.
Exactly. So a lead is somebody who's either stopped by your booth, filled out an interest card, went to your website and requested information, called you, you know, that's a great lead, right?
Best lead ever,
Emailed
probably.
you, right? Those are leads. Now, there are some companies and a lot of companies, they have like a million different websites and they all do the same thing, and their goal is to get people to fill out an online form, right?
Mm-hmm.
So their goal, they have like, I don't know, MedicareInformation.com. I'm making that up. I have no idea if that's a real website. Okay,
It
probably is.
probably is. Yeah, that's where my
Probably is. And I don't know if they're a lead collection. Okay, but these businesses, and for the consumer, they don't know. They think they're filling out information for a company that's going to call them. The agents many times don't understand that these lead gathering organizations, they are selling that lead to 10 or 15 other people. I think we touched on that a little bit in the last episode. So they're selling that information of that lead. So if you are not the first person that calls them, or the second, or maybe the third, they are going to be mad by the time they talk to you because they've gotten 15 phone calls and they're not very happy, or they've shut off their phone and they're not answering numbers that they don't know who they are because they're
yeah.
like, I didn't sign up to be called by 100 people. So they get mad. Another type of lead, which I don't consider a lead myself, and I don't even know if this is legal anymore in 2023, but that's where they get a letter saying your Social Security benefits have changed, your Medicare's changed, call us right now because you may be eligible for blah, blah, blah. Okay, usually the people that are responding to this, or at least in my experience, and I know people that do wonderfully with these kind of leads. I wasn't the type of person that did well because when I called them, it seemed to me like 90% of the people that I called on those type of leads, and they were being sold to me like a exclusive lead for $40 or whatever. Those type of people didn't know what they were filling out, and the majority of
Mm-hmm.
the people that I called were in memory care or some type of assisted living, and I felt like I had to talk with their family. I'm like, it's obviously they have dementia and I don't feel comfortable selling to them. So I did terribly with those leads. It was just a big waste of my money. I did it once, and I know there's lots of people who do well with those leads. Personally, I'm not one of them. Those are leads though, because they filled something out and they sent it to you. So when you're in the getting going stage, you're probably buying leads or at least getting names. And because otherwise, you're not probably generating enough business. Now you don't have to buy leads. You can get your leads in other ways. So, Kristen, let's talk about some ways to get leads. So you can set up a booth at the local senior center,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I had to pay for my booth. So I did it once a week or once a month, I forget. But I set my booth up at the local senior center. And when I first started doing it, I was a little mad because nobody would come over and talk to me. And literally the only people I got to talk to were the people in the next booth. And it took me like 2 sessions before I remembered my BNI training. So do you remember we talked earlier about BNI?
Mm-hmm.
So I was already out of BNI by then, by the time I set up this booth. And then I thought, how could I make my time here not a waste? Now, I did bring my computer, I did work on things while I was there. But what I started doing was building relationships with those booths next to me because remember, we can create our own mastermind groups, right? And if they're selling to seniors, that means they can refer to you. So I started building those relationships with the people who were sitting next to me because they were never another insurance agent. They were always somebody else. And most importantly, building relationships with the employees of the senior center. Because guess what? They give out leads too. People come to them and ask them questions about Medicare. And they're like, I don't know. And so who can I give? Well, I know that there's 5 people who have bought booths and we rotate them, blah, blah, blah. But who's been the friendliest to me? Now, some of them will do it that way, and other senior centers have a list that they have to go off of that they rotate their leads. But if you can build that relationship with the people sitting next to you in another booth and the people who have sold you the booth, it might take a little time, but that is really a way to get that double whammy. Sometimes you'll have people come up and talk to you in the booth, but it's probably not going to be every week. Another thing too is I was working a booth when an insurance company was selling prescription drugs at CVS, and I got the booth for free. And I went to CVS, I did my thing, and people got used to seeing me there. And then I got leads that way too. So I wasn't pushy, when people get used to seeing your face, they're more likely to send you a lead because they've seen you over and over. They know that you're serious about your business. So those are a couple of ways. So Kristen, what are some ways that you can think of when a under 100, in that getting going stage, how can they get leads besides just buying them? There's got to be some other ways.
Yeah, for sure. I think, and there's so many ways. I want to preface what I'm about to say by saying there are so many ways you can get leads. We could have a 6-hour conversation on this topic probably alone, but I'm going to tell what I always teach to our agents. So what I always tell people in this stage, when you're trying to go from, 0 clients to 100, 25 to 100, 50 to 100, whatever the case might be, my recommendation is diversifying your approach. Now, you don't want to probably diversify yourself too much when you're under 100 clients. You don't want to stretch yourself too thin. But I've always said coming up with 3 to 5 different ways of getting leads is a really, really good way to go about it, because chances are most of the things you're going to be trying at this stage in your career are going to quote a friend of mine in the business, everything works a little, nothing works a lot. And I don't think that's 100% true. I think there are some things that work a lot, but sometimes they're harder to uncover what they are. But you need to come up with 3 to 5 different ways. So like if partnering with a senior center is one way, like Kathe said, or, trying to get into a booth, typically you can work with like a United Healthcare and get into a Walgreens because of their partnership at no cost. You can, as Kathe said, you can probably work with, usually it's going to be Aetna that can get you in the CVSs because CVS owns Aetna these days. So those are opportunities that you can kind of have to kind of get yourself in. Probably the best, across the board, really not everywhere, but in a majority of places, the best booth opportunity probably was the Walmart booth opportunity. It's kind of looking like yes. I've been asked by countless agents over the last 3 months about what's going on with that. It's not going to happen, guys.
Well, they own their own agency. Why would
right.
they? And why would you want to go into an organization that owns their own competing agency with you?
Yes. I did a video about 2 years ago called "Is Walmart Dead for Medicare Agents?" And I got more shit about that video than probably any video I've ever put out, but it was the truth. I mean, the writing has been on the wall for 3 years with that. And I think there's truth to what you said in that, because, again, you are getting those consumers because they're seeing you routinely, but they're also very easily for them to be taken away from you because the Walmart agent is now there, and they're like, oh, where'd so-and-so go? And the Walmart agent could be like, oh, I don't know. They're
out of business, probably.
They're out of yeah, exactly.
I mean, they just bake whatever they want up, right?
And you might lose some clients if your book has been built on Walmart. That would scare the hell out of me, 100%. But anyway, like outside of those kind of things, some different things you could do. I think if we're trying to avoid buying leads and and spending a whole lot of money, which of course when you're building up to 100 clients you don't have a lot of money to spend, One thing I did in my early days, and we talked a little bit about this on the last episode, but well, we talked a lot about building referral partners. I don't want to go too much into that, but one thing that you could do that's very easy, anybody could do it. It was very effective for me, was you want to work with some of these communities that are 55 and up communities and find ways to be a resource to the community. So what I was used to do was I would go in and I would try to do something fun for the residents that they don't see over and over again. They see bingo over and over again. They have people come in and do Medicare 101s over and over again, which don't get me, I mean, trust me, to them, they'd rather, jump off their balcony than sit through another Medicare 101. And so
now, when you talk about 55 and older communities, are you talking about the residential where they cook your meals for you and so you get an apartment, or are you talking about the 55 and older homes like where I live? What are you talking about?
Probably more the homes is the ones that I had the better luck with. So like they're the ones that I've worked with. Now, the ones where they cook the meals for you, usually those are more on the assisted living side, not all, but like,
well, they have independent assisted memory care, usually all in one, right?
Yeah. And I mean, and we've had good results with those as well. But for me, like what I always did that I had the most success with is I'd go to as many of these as I could within maybe a 50-mile radius of where I was. I'd go in and I'd pitch the activities director, because a lot of these places will have activities directors. Not all of them. Some of them are just more like apartments, and there's not a lot going on, but not all of them. Some of them are going to have like things going on, in the community and things like that. And so the activities director, what is their biggest challenge? It's keeping the full schedule. So if you can come in with something interesting, you're doing them a favor, because there's an hour to 2 hour time block where they don't have to figure anything out. You got that handled. So what I would do is I would go in, and one thing that I did that was probably the biggest hit in my early career was I'd go in and I'd do rock painting events. So I
was just going to say that. I just did rock painting last year but not for Medicare. It was just because I'm part of the community next door to one of those apartment buildings. But yes, and they asked me what I would do, and I said, "Well, I can do rock painting," and it was so fun.
Yeah, Kristen. and everybody loves it. Everybody loves it. So like, what I would do?
How did you tie that into Medicare?
Well, I to be honest, I
just
can't
wore your badge.
I can't say that I really did. So what I did was
I just wore your badge.
I'd wear a badge, and then at the beginning of it, because when you do one of those, you're hosting it for everybody. So you're kind of guiding them, like we're all going to paint this design today. And I'm going to show you how we're going to step by step, try to paint this design. And before we get started, I'd stand up and I'd say, "Hey, everybody, my name is Christian. I live around here. I run a little organization that works with people on Medicare. If anybody has any questions about Medicare, when we're done, come up and talk to me. I am independent. I work with a bunch of different insurance companies, and I'm here to be an unbiased resource and answer any questions that you have. Now let's paint some rocks."
I have a question. Okay, so you go in, you're wearing your badge, you do a little spiel at the beginning of the conversation, at the beginning of the fun activity about what you do, but you're not really talking about Medicare. It's not an educational event. It's not a sales event. Do you have to file this as an event?
Thankfully not. And if you did, I probably wouldn't have done it. I think
the big gorilla company probably has a rule that you'd have to file it as an event.
Yeah.
I don't know if they do or not, because just because you say your name and you wear your badge, does that make it an event? So okay, for the viewers, post a comment below and let us know if you think that's an event. I say no. What do you say, Kristen?
I think it's again, I agree with you. It's probably in the eyes of the carrier. Some carriers would say no, some carriers would probably say yes. But even if the carriers that did consider it an event, I think it'd be more along the lines of educational than sales.
But it's not even educational, because you're not even talking about Medicare. You just mentioned that you did it. It's like if you go to church and somebody asks you a question about Medicare and you answer it, does that mean that you have to you have to file that like a permission to talk with that person? Like, I don't know.
What's nice about like even if they in my definition, if I was the one, that made the decision, I would obviously say no. I think any reasonable person would say no. But let's say there's a carrier that said it was. You don't have to file the educational events. You have to file the sales events. Educational events you don't have to file anymore.
There you go.
And so that's why like every event I ever do, even when we do full-on seminars, we just did a seminar last night. We always do education because the restrictions are far less than at a sales event. But to me, it's not an event. But even if it was considered an event by a carrier, I still think you wouldn't have any problems, because the only thing they could, like the closest thing they could maybe even categorize it as an educational, and it's not even that.
Even that. And you know what's interesting, Kristen? When I first started, I didn't get it. I was like, when they explained it to me, I had a carrier explain to me that educational events, you could get the contact information, and sales events, you could not. And educational events, you could have a meal, sales events, you cannot. And I'm like, why would I do an educational event? Like, I'm like, this is stupid. Why would I do something when I'm not allowed to give out my business card? I'm not allowed to, I can barely say my name. I'm like, why would I do that? And so I refused to do educational events when I was brand new. And the funny thing is that I was a business consultant for SCORE. Have you ever heard of SCORE?
Mm-mm.
So SCORE is a program. It used to mean something retired executives. And there's a SCORE in every major city in the United States. And basically, and you as a business owner, you as an insurance agent, because you're a business owner, can get free help from SCORE. And they have free one-on-one sessions. You can do either in person or you can do over the phone. And they also have usually paid classes that you can take on different topics. And, like you can go learn how to build a website. You can learn how to do marketing. You can do all these free sessions at SCORE. And I was a business consultant at SCORE. And we weren't allowed to say our company name or hand out business cards either unless somebody asked. And I was totally okay with that at SCORE. And then finally, Kristen, I'm not that smart, obviously, because things take a while for them to sink into my head. After a while, I thought, you know what, I'm going to start doing these educational workshops. Kristen, that was the best decision I ever made. So tell me about your educational that you did and why you did it. Like, you were probably just a lot smarter than me. You had your dad helping you, saying, yes, you want to do educational events. If somebody asks you for your card, you can give it to them. You can't say, well, I can't give it to you because this is an educational event. I can't get a scope of appointment. So, you're going to have to call me. So in addition, okay, so forget the rock painting, because that's just a fun event where you are in the community.
It's inexpensive. That's kind of that's kind of why I put it in this category, because it's inexpensive. Like, between buying the rocks, you can buy them at Lowe's, Garden Rocks, you buy the paint, you're probably out of pocket $30, maybe that.
My assisted living paid for all that stuff. I just showed up and they bought all the materials.
There you go. Even better. Even better. I mean, but it's really inexpensive. So like for what we do mostly with our educational seminars is they're much more expensive. So I think they probably would go into a different category. Now you can do them on a lower budget. Like the way you do them on a low budget, like what we did, the one we did last night was at a restaurant. We bought everybody dinner. To get 30 people in the room, we had to, it wasn't cheap to make sure that it was advertised properly, make sure we had enough people in the room. So all of that, right? Like we're out of pocket probably $1,500 for the seminar.
And are total. They turning 65? Or are there anybody?
Yes. Yeah. These are specifically tailored to turning 65, which are more expensive to target than any other demographic because everybody's targeting them. As you know. And so, but if you're doing a low budget seminar, and I'll give you the Cliff Notes version of this so I don't go too far into the weeds. But if you're doing a low budget seminar, one way you can do it is you can host them at a library. A lot of libraries will let you have a meeting space for no charge. If they do charge you something, maybe it's 40, $50. I've seen it both ways. It's not a lot. You find a way to get some data lists, not leads, like we talked about earlier, but data of people turning 65. There's a lot of ways you can do it. If you're under the Integrity Marketing umbrella, they have the Turning 65 locator that you can see like a map of everybody that's turning 65, and you can specify by just different months. That's a free thing you can do. But the other thing you can do is you can talk to your upline, you can talk to a carrier, see if they'll pay for a list for you over the course of a year. That's probably the easiest thing you can do. And then you put together like an inexpensive black and white mailer. You mail it out, and that's a low budget seminar. And will you have 30 people in the room? Probably not, because you're not going to have the plate lickers as much.
But you have 3.
Yes. I mean, like we did one of those, because we do those as well. We do the library seminars and we do the dinner seminars every month. And we did a library seminar last month that had 8, 9 people at it. We barely paid anything for it. We barely paid anything for it.
And they're very interested because they're
Yes.
not coming for the food.
Yes. Yep. So like that's a very easy, I'm not easy. It's a little work to get it all coordinated, but it's a very low cost thing you can do to get people together in the same room and do a presentation one time for a maximum amount of people. That's what I'm all about these days, is trying to find ways to do multitude of things. So yeah, I mean, those are a couple things you can do without spending a lot of money. Of course, there's always leads you can buy. There's leads that are more expensive than others and things like that. But yeah, I mean, there's so many things you can do to get leads.
Oh, and you can do free sales seminars,
Mm-hmm.
and what you have to do is make friends with the carriers. So pick like one carrier that you really like, their plan. Let's say in your area, it might be carrier A or carrier B, and reach out to that carrier, present a business plan, say, here's my plan. It doesn't have to be a 40-page business plan. Just here's my plan. I am going to be sending out X amount of mailers. I'm going to be doing this. Tell them the 3 things that you're going to be doing to get business. Tell them why you like their plan, and ask them if they will help you set up some sales seminars where they are talking, where you are presenting their plan. Ask the carrier rep to come with you. Maybe even ask the carrier rep if they have any sales presentations where you can come along. Just say, look, I'm new in the business. I really want to learn. I really like your program. And can you set up some seminars for me? And last year, I had a carrier approach me, and we did 3 seminars, and it didn't cost me a dime. All I had to do was show up and do the presentation, and the carrier showed up too. I was surprised, and he set up the room. Now, we had a couple of glitches, so the hotel where he had it set up in didn't know we were coming, and he had paid for the room. And I was like, well, I usually do these things in restaurants. So you can have a sales seminar in a restaurant, you just can't serve a meal. And so we could have had coffee and a slice of pie. This is why we call them pie seminars, right? Because you serve pie because it's not a meal. But they approached me. But if I was new in the business, I could have approached them and said, here. So you can do free seminars that the carriers actually mail out to. They talk to their lists of people that have called in, and they say, we're going to be here at these 3 time slots. And you can do that too. And that's 100% free. It just takes your time and your effort, right? Right, Christian?
Yep. I remember when I was new in the business, we had a really good hookup with our local Blue. And they were doing these seminars at the time. They don't do them anymore, but and I'm not to say that you couldn't get in on something like this if it was the right market, the right opportunity. It's worth kind of having these conversations, like Kathe said. For this first AEP I had, they invited a couple people from our office out, and I was one of them. And the carrier rep did the entire seminar. It was at their office, their headquarters. They did everything. Like we had nothing to do with it. We just had to show up. The carrier rep did all the presentation. And then anyone that was interested, they sent them back to the back, and we just did the app with them.
Wow, that's
So
amazing. Now they didn't have career agents, right? So if they have career agents, you're not going
yes,
to get that opportunity.
it's not gonna be that again. Is that going to be common? No. Have I heard of it happening in other places in certain situations, certain opportunities? Yes. And so you never know what you can stumble into
If
by
you
building those
ask.
relationships. And if you ask and kind of see what's available and those kind of things, if you don't ask, the answer is always no.
Now, usually the carriers do like to see that you've written at least one application with them, because they do get a lot of requests. And so
Mm-hmm.
I would, if you're in stage 3, that means you've done 10 apps, right? You've done 10 applications. So go to the carrier that you've done the most applications with in this stage 4 and ask them if they will sponsor some seminars for you, some sales presentations. Because in general, they're probably not going to want to do educational workshops. Some will. That brings me to another place you can go. If there is a brand new carrier in your market that has never done business in your market before, let's say they are brand new or they've been in there a year, you have the perfect opportunity to build a relationship with that carrier. They are desperate to write business, and they will make deals with you now when they're brand new in the market that they won't make with you in 5 years. So if there's a carrier in your market, now you're walking a little bit dangerously because carriers come into markets, they also leave markets. And, chances are you might get a bunch of clients on with them, and then they'll change everything the following year, and you might have to rewrite all those clients. So keep in mind that if you do go after brand new carriers, it's a little bit dangerous, but it's also a way to get some experience under your belt that will help you in your next stage. What do you think about that? Am I totally off base, Kristen? You can totally disagree with me. It's okay.
So I agree with the premise. I actually don't look at it as risky. And the reason is, can the carrier call it quits and pull out? Sure. But it also, I mean, if they call it quits and pull out, not only do you have the opportunity, you can go back and rewrite those clients, right? Like they're still your clients. You can contact them, that kind of thing. And chances are they're clients that you wouldn't have gotten if you hadn't gone after that opportunity in the first place. So I look at it as very low risk. Even the worst case scenario, in my opinion, would be you have to rewrite them. Maybe the product is more roller coastery, as I like to call it. Like it doesn't stay stable. Maybe it pulls out. It's hard to know, but I'm willing to take that risk to get those additional clients and to establish that relationship. And then you flip them to a company that's more established down the road, if something goes wrong. But yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that's a very good opportunity working with a new carrier, and the carriers are more motivated to do what they need to do to help you when they're new and they're trying to develop a footprint, and they need you. They really need you as brokers in that market to make that happen. And yeah, so I think that's a great way to go about it. I'm bullish on that. And I think it's worth any risk that can come with it.
And also for the viewer, think about it this way too. A lot of the more established agents are going to wait.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to sell that carrier until they're more established, or maybe they've decided, let's say if you've got 1,000 clients, you're probably less likely to sell a brand new 3-star carrier in your market when you've got a 4 and a 5-star, or there's very few 5 stars, but if you've got a 4 and a 4.5 star, you're probably, if you're more established, going to lean towards those. So you are not competing with those big brokers in your area either. And the brand new carriers, a lot of times they have marketing funds. Maybe they have money because they're funded by what do you call the people that give startups money? But anyway, they're funded.
Venture capital.
Yes,
Yeah.
They might be funded by venture capitalists, and so they've got money to spend, and you
Hmm.
can be part of that. So there are ways to get yourself out there where it doesn't have to cost you a lot of money.
Yep.
And forming these relationships with carriers can really be a big step in that direction. And when I first started, I never got into this program because I did not get along with my broker manager. But when I first started, it was a big company, and they had career agents, but they also worked with brokers. And I forget what they called it, but basically you would go and you would sit in a room for 2 hours and you would call the people who had called in and asked, and they were interested in learning more about the product. And so you might be able to get in on these call sessions where you are returning calls from leads who have called in and requested information from the carrier. So
Hmm.
find out if you're another reason to make good relationships with these carrier reps, because they have programs that you might not even be aware of.
Yep. Yep. I would agree. I would agree. I think there's so many things. There's so many things you guys can do to get business. It's just mind-boggling. I would encourage you guys, if you're in this stage, come up with 3 to 5, 3 to 5 ways, and spread your efforts across those 3 to 5 ways. Diversify a little bit, and you'll have a good little drip of lead flow on all of them, and those drips can combine to be a little bit more of an actual flow of leads. And then of course, if something stops working as well, maybe something kind of tempers off. Maybe there's a regulation change of some kind that affects you. Maybe there's a market change that affects you. You have other methods that are working well for you that you can kind of lean into. So I think I like that kind of strategy.
So I'm going to draw a picture now. This is sort of how I learned about it when I was a financial advisor. And this is how do we spell it? Elevator. I think I spelled it wrong, but this is an elevator, right? And it's got 2 poles holding it up. I probably
Yep.
spelled that wrong. And this is an elevator, and look at all the poles it has holding it up.
Mm-hmm.
These are your lead generation areas. Which one do you want to be? Which elevator would you step on? The one with only 2 or the one with multiple?
Yep.
So what Kristen is saying is, be in this elevator. That's what
Yes.
Kristen is saying, and I totally agree.
Absolutely. 100%. Anyway, guys, if you enjoyed this additional section of this series that Kathe and I are doing together on the steps and the stages that you go through in your Medicare business evolution, do us a favor, drop a like on the video. It helps more people just like you who need to hear this information find it easier. Comment your thoughts down below. Do you agree with what we talked about? Do you disagree? I'd like to hear from both of you, both camps, if you will. We can have a respectful conversation. Subscribe for future content. We will be having more of these videos coming out to finish out the series, so keep an eye on the channel for them, and we'll be back next time. Thanks, guys.